All right, so Boober. This is our first time with Boober. So again, I'm gonna go around and see how you felt. I read a little bit of your responses already. I already know what a few of you think, but please share, right? So let me see. Any success stories for Boober? Any tens? Anybody really love Boober? Okay, 9. Okay, Marissa, is that you? Okay, 8, 7, 6. Okay, 2, 7, Avila, 6. All right, here comes a 6, 5, 4, 3. Tessie Miller is 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, let's start with the haters. Tessie Miller, you asked for it. Tell us what happened.
Okay, so first disclaimer, I'm still going off the syllabus and not what you posted. So the readings are different.
No, really?
Yes. We found that out in the group discussions. So
let me check. I need to know. I need this. This can't be. So hold on. Let me check the syllabus. Minimize when I'm recording. Okay. I'm stopping the recording. I'm pausing the recording. I need to check this. This is important. Okay, back to, I think it was friend Tessia Miller was talking about her impressions. Go ahead.
So, well, I was just gonna say that they were like, I felt like he had contradictions. You know, at one point he was saying, you know, the like exclusivity of like the spirit, but then like in the second part he's like the spirit is just the word, and I'm like, okay, so what is it? And then a part that I did like when he was talking about love and its entanglements and what does that mean, but it was just the the contradictions that threw me off with him.
Good, good. Yes, you have to be careful with someone like Boober because often I have the same experience, right? It seems like he's contradicting himself, but often is that I don't understand exactly what he's saying. So I would have to, if you want, we can stay after and look at those contradictions since none of your group saw them. But often when we see contradictions like this, it's often that we have misunderstood a little bit what the author is trying to say. But I still need to hear, and if you want to, you can stay after and we can look at some of those contradictions. Okay, so your issue, why you gave him a 3 is because of the contradictions? Is similar?
Sorry, yes, I forgot you can't see me. Yes.
Yes, okay, good. All right, very good. So yeah, if you have any contradiction that is really killing you, you can stay after class and we look at it. Okay, the lovers. I think there was one lover was Morissette, and then whoever else wants to add. Go ahead, Morissette.
I don't know. I feel like the book actually speaks to me in a way that I understood. I don't know. I don't even know how to put that. It's just like I can understand the I eat and the IU. I just see it because it's like it's a perfect way for people to understand life technically, how it's built, especially nowadays. It's like your life as a human being when you have to deal with people and the life that you deal with the world. It's like the you versus the world and the you and your relationship with other people. Basically it's entirely both of them make you the human that you are.
Very good.
Because now you cannot see the relationship you have with the world without the relationship that you have with people. It's entirely, it's just one thing. It's, for example, it's like when you invoke technology, how people see themselves with technology, how you have, as a human being, you have to know when to use the world as a it and when to use the world as a you. And I think that's actually what got to me the most, because as a scientist now and a future scientist and in the future, I'm seeing myself like it's like everything, like the example that he take with the tree and the tree versus people, and how you can actually appreciate things the way they are without dissecting them, without putting every little part of that thing to the side. You have to do that sometimes. So you have to, even when you're doing that, you have to be able to not forget that whatever you're dissecting at the moment, it's a whole thing, and you have to appreciate that whole thing while you're dissecting it. And I feel like that's what makes me more, I don't know.
Yes,
It's weird.
it's good for scientists to read a little bit of philosophy. It's true, because the scientific worldview can become very reductive, right?
Exactly.
Philosophy reminds there's other ways to look at this, right? And we shouldn't forget, right? Very good. Excellent. Anybody else want to add a comment before we go in the text? That's it? All right. Hakimian, go ahead, Hakimian.
Yeah, hi. Just like one little thing, I was looking at like some of the notes I took on the reading. And on page 62, he says something that like reminds me of like what Rumi was saying in, I can't remember the name of the poem, but I think it's like the first one of the PDF, I'm not sure. But he says, the you encounters me by grace, it cannot be found by seeking. And I just thought of how like, the lover comes to you when you're asleep kind of thing. I don't know if you remember that line, but that just really like spoke to me.
We're going to actually talk about that passage today, so you're on point. Very good. And we'll compare it to Rumi like you did. Excellent. Good, good. So we'll more on this later. Anybody else want to add comment? Okay. Some of you, just looking at your reading assignments, had two problems. One of it was how convoluted his writing seems, right? So remember, I don't know if I told you this when I introduced Buber, but we are in the post-war, right? We are in this context where everything has exploded, right? The European psyche has exploded. And I mentioned that after the two world wars, the Europeans lost kind of their sense that, you know, they knew what they were doing, in essence, right? They lost the sense that of direction, right? They're not so sure of themselves anymore, like someone like Kant, for instance. Remember, Kant is pretty, you know, this is how it is, this is how it is, and there's a kind of, you know, strong voice, strong authority running through, right? His voice is kind of a voice of authority. When you get to people like Buber, and even a little bit Kierkegaard, and to a certain degree, way before, you have this kind of notion that there is no coherent truth anymore. All we have now are glimpses or scattered sparks of meaning, right? So he writes like this, right? This is a fragmented writing. This is a writing of someone who realizes, I don't know where I'm going, but I see this little piece here and this little piece here and this little piece here, and that's all I can share with you, right? So this is really, we are in the context, beginning of postmodernism, right? Of fragmented truth, right? And people are scrambling. People like Buber are saying, oh, I see, I understand this, I get this too, but I don't know, I have no sense really of direction and clarity. I just see glimpses, right? So that can explain a little bit why he writes all over the place, why it's short paragraphs, why it just hits you and then he moves on, because he's, look at it like broken glass, right? Buber writes like broken glass, right? Lo, you want to add?
Yeah, I feel like that's why I liked it, because like there's no one answer. It's like this is the only way, and I get a little bit like, I'm like, really, is that true? Is that the one way for everyone? So that's why I like it, because it left room for like your own personal like assessments on your own life and how you want to apply it.
Very good, right? And also to add to what you're saying, Buber is also poetic, right? He's not just, you can sense when he's writing that these are metaphors, right? He's speaking a lot in metaphors. So this again broadens the spectrum of interpretation. When you're speaking like a poet, there are many ways, right, to read this. And so that's also makes it, so he's really a postmodern writer in the sense that truth is fragmented, that we can have multiple interpretations, right? So that's, some of you would vibe with that, right? Because we are in the postmodern era, right? Very good. So this should help, I forget who wrote these comments, right, in the reading assignment, but this should help you to understand why he writes all over the place, fragmented, and so forth. Okay, let's get into the text. So in the first hour, we'll talk about the I, you, and the I, it. We'll decipher these two, and we'll begin with Kant and go deeper, like I promised you. And then in the second hour, we shall learn the key to the renewal of marriage. So this should be very vital information for you in a few years, right? I actually asked the student last time I taught this to make a little like magnet with the quote we're going to study in the second hour to put on your fridge so that when your marriage starts to fall apart, you can look at that quote, right? So we're going to study that quote today, which hopefully when you're starting to see things fall apart, you can go and find that quote. This is a key, right? This is one of the most important keys to renewing your marriage, but this is in the second hour. So first hour, let's begin. Let me review a little bit what we said last time. Oh, sorry, before I go into that, just one quick word to Lopez. Are you there, Lopez? Yes, Lopez, your reading assignment needs to be questions and critiques, not a summary. Can you redo it, please? And put in the late paper. Can you hear me? Okay, hopefully you heard. All right, back to Buber. All right, so there are two, just to summarize now, right? There are two main ways, I think Morissette was talking about that we enter the world, right? And most of us know only one way, which is the way of the I with the objects, right? So most of us, and this is generalized, right? And this is why Buber is writing this book. We enter the world and we're looking for what will be useful to us, right? We're looking for things that will be beneficial to us, whether it's classes or certain food or exercise or certain people. We are always have this mindset, how can I use this relationship? How can I use this person? How is this person beneficial to me? And that is how we encounter the world, right? And this is, of course, what Buber calls the I-it relationship, right? So let me write this down. Okay, so this is, and so that's the first fundamental way most of us enter the world. We enter the world as objects that we can take and use to our own, right? Make sure all of you are muted. Okay. Good. Okay, now there's a second way that we often miss, and this is what Buber calls the I-you, right? And now for him, this is the art of relationships. And this is an art that we are forgetting. We do not know how to engage with people as people. We continue to engage with people as with things, right? And we see this, right? We see this in the way we befriend people. We see this in the way we date. We see this in the way that we treat the working class, right? We see this, you know, we mentioned some of these things, right? Our society more and more has become a society of things, of its, and we are more and more in our own relationship dealing with people as with things. For example, this is a famous one that your therapist will tell you when things start to go bad in the relationship. They will say, well, is this relationship still serving you? How many of you have heard this expression? Let me get some hands. How many of you have heard it? Okay, so, and if it doesn't serve you, what is expected? Tell me. It's not serving you. You let it go. Very good, right? This is advice you will get, right? Is this relationship still serving you? No, I'm not benefiting from it anymore. I'm not getting anything from it anymore. So why should I stay, right? And when we live like this, Buber will say, that's fine. You'll be happier, maybe, but you'll miss the depth of the encounter that you could have had, right? You are living on the surface. You're living still in a world of I-it relationship. You're still living in a world of its. Another expression is, I have outgrown this relationship. Let's see, how many of you have heard that expression, that I had outgrown the relationship and I needed, okay, so this is common, right? So when you've outgrown the relationship, meaning the relationship now is too small, is pulling you down. So again, it's not serving me, it's not benefiting me, it's not causing me to grow, so it's not useful. And so now it's time to go. So even, right, in the therapy, right, which is supposed to be there to heal the relationship, even in that context of psychology, right, you have the mentality that it has to serve me, right? And this is, again, this notion of it, right? So Buber is not saying that we should abandon the I-it relationship, right? He's saying this is only one level. We are often missing the deeper level that we could be relating to each other because we stay on that surface, right? So that's really what he's trying to do, right? So, and it applies very directly with romantic relationships. And so we even have, you know, now to look past the therapist in the dating scene, right? You have a date, doesn't work out. Suppose you go on a date with someone, first date, right? Tinder date, right? You never seen them before, you meet them once, and then you come home and you're like, I don't think it's gonna work out. What do you do? What do you end up doing? Do you write them a long letter of apology? What do you do typically? Tell me. Yes, Aguirre. You ghost them. Thank you, Hakimian. Exactly.
I just stop talking with them. Stop talking with them and then just erase them from my social media and just like
exactly. You see
nothing happened.
see how natural you are at this. You don't even talk to them. They disappear, right? In other words, it's like you bought something, it doesn't work, and you throw it in the wastebasket, right? So the ghosting, which of course, if it the
Damn, girl.
if the relationship
You was savage.
yes very good. Yes. So if in the relationship you don't want it to work out, often we don't even bother to tell them, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling this, right? We don't even talk to them. They're like something we bought that we don't like, and it's like, okay, let me get rid of this, right? So do you see how natural we are at treating people like it, right? It's become normal, right? And Buber is saying we're losing something fundamental, right? Everybody follows what I'm saying? Are you seeing how impoverished we are? Okay, very good, right? So Buber is he's not going to make any moral judgments, right? That's not his purpose. He's simply going to say, I want you to rediscover how it could be. I want you to rediscover the dimension of depth that you're missing, right? When you are simply on the level of an I-it relationship. Here's what you're missing. Here's what we need to, in a way, rediscover, because this is what will bring us to our true humanity. We're going to talk about that, right, in a second. Okay, so briefly, the I-it we know already from Kant, right? I'm not going to go into details, but in essence, you can jot down that the I-it is simply treating someone like an object, right? I-it means treating someone like an it, right? That is to say, like an object, right? That you can use and discard. And use and discard. That's in essence, right? We saw this already with Kant, right? So here we're not far from Kant. We're still in the territory of Kant. But now what Buber is going to suggest to us is once we want to go deeper in our relationships than the I-it level, we need to enter the I-you dimension. And this is where Buber goes way beyond Kant. So let's go to page 55, which is where he really develops this. So turn with me to 55, the top paragraph. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to do this together, because remember, if Buber is a poet, like Rumi, kind of, then there are many facets to any one given sentence, right? So we need each other to really cover all of the facets. So I'm going to ask today, exceptionally, we're going to work together in the interpretation of this text, right? I'm going to read the line like I did for Rumi, and you guys are going to give me what you think it means. And that's how we're going to build the meaning, this lecture. Okay, so page 55, let me make sure all of you are there. Page 55, whoever says you, are you there? Raise your hand. Let me see your faces. Please keep your cameras on so I can communicate with you. Thank you. Okay, very good. All right, excellent. So here's the first layer of the I-you relationship. And this one is pretty familiar. This is kind of similar to Kant. Whoever says you does not have something for his object. Okay, can anyone translate this to me? What does Buber mean here? It should be easy. Yes.
Like it's not a transaction.
Okay, very good, right? Whoever has you simply doesn't have a thing, right? Doesn't have something. In other words, when you're dealing with a you, when you're in an I-you relationship, you do not have a relationship with a something or with a thing, or to use Buber's language, with an it. So here, just repeating what Kant is saying. When you're with, if you want to get to the level of the I-you, deeper than the I-it, you have to learn to not treat someone like an it, to not treat someone like an object, to take a step back. Anytime you want to use someone, possess someone, manipulate someone, discard someone, you take a step back and you think, is this really treating them like a person, or am I treating them like an object? Okay, so this is Kant. We saw this with Kant. You don't see them as a means to an end, but as an end, right? So it's the same idea. So let me say it again, right? This first part, right? When you want to get to the layer, to the level of the I-you, first thing you do, you take a step back anytime you're tempted to use or discard somebody. Use, possess, or discard. Right? These are the three temptations. There are more, but these are the three main ones: to use someone, to possess someone or control someone, or discard someone when we're done with them, right? So these are the, if we take, so to really get to that level, we have to resist, right, the urge of either using, controlling, discarding, because this is bringing us back to the level of the I-it, right? Everything clear so far? Is this good? Put your hand in the screen if I'm clear. I'm serious about keeping your screens on, guys. I can't see you. You know, I go back and forth. I'm always checking with you, so I need your screen to be on so that we can move faster. Okay, Morissette, you have a question. Go ahead. Morissette, you have a question?
Yes. Okay, so for what you just said, does that mean like, is it like the explanation that he gave for love? Like when you said not being in a relationship, like being controlling and stuff, do you mean like for when he said, I can't remember the part, but it's like he says, when you are in a relationship, when you love, it's not like feeling the relationship isolated in your own heart. It's being part of the relationship. So technically you dwell with the love. It's not like you feel the love in your heart, but then you act upon it between your heart, but technically you take the decision for yourself and yourself. So technically it's like feeling love and be part of the love. So being one with the love and the other person. Is that what you mean?
So this, what you're talking, when Buber starts to talk about feelings, he's actually introducing the third way of relating, which we'll talk in the second hour, which is the I. So
Yeah.
you gotta wait for that. That's slightly different, because feelings don't come into play when you want to use someone. It's not like, it's not any type of, desire or lust. It's just, I need this and I'm going to get it this way, right? So this is a third component we'll talk about in the second hours. For now, he's just distinguishing these two. And feelings don't play too much of a role, just the neediness maybe. So romantic feelings don't play too much of a role there, right? When you need someone, to have their car, when you want to use someone, because you're bored, there's no feelings, right? And of course, the I-you is also deeper than feelings. It goes deeper than the feelings you might have at the moment, kind of like Kant, right? So you have to wait a little bit till we get to the I for that. Okay, so we got the first part now. Here's the second one where I'm going to need you. If you go 5 lines down, he says something, and he says, the you has no borders. How many of you see that? The you has no borders? Put your hand in the screen. 5 lines down from the top of page 55. Okay, so this is the one we're going to spend a little bit of time on, okay? This is very poetic, right? He's using a metaphor, right? Comparing the other person to a territory that doesn't have borders. What does that mean, right? What is he saying when he says that the you, to treat someone like a you, is to see them as having no borders? Now we should get a lot of interpretations. You should be coming up with many different ways of understanding this. So I'm gonna rely on you, so I'm waiting. What does it mean? What are some of the ways you've interpreted this?
Maybe that like someone as a person isn't clear cut and they're not like easily definable, and there's there's just like so much to them that you can't just like define them as just one thing.
Okay, very good. Let's take this first one, right? Then we'll get to low. A, okay, small, number one, right? One way to understand this is to realize that people, we can't, pin them down, right? Anytime you think you have pinned someone down, yeah, they're this, they're that, they're this, they're always much more, right? So actually this connects to something Kierkegaard said. Does anybody remember what Kierkegaard said about pinning someone down? That's, oh, they're this, they did this, therefore they're this now. Or does anybody know? Morissette.
Actually, it reminded me of what you said for the relationship, when you said that everybody has everything inside of them. Like when you're bored of a relationship, you say that you're looking for something else and another person, but that person you just left actually have that thing.
Okay, good. You added to it. Okay, so let's start with that one and then go back to what I was saying. First thing we can say is that every human being has an ocean, right? Remember the quote by Rumi, right? The ocean within the water jar. And so often we go to find what we need somewhere else when actually that person always had it, but we didn't know how to access it. We didn't know how to help them release it, right? Every single human being has everything. Could be anything, right? So if you start to feel I'm missing this, I'm missing that, you can actually find it there if you know how to look, right? So okay, that's number one. Let's put number one, the quote by Rumi, the ocean in the water jar. Everyone has everything that we need. We don't need to look elsewhere, but we have to learn to help them release some of these things. Okay, now number two had to do with pinning somebody down. What does it mean when you start, suppose somebody lies to you a couple times and now you pin them down and you're like, oh, he's liar, she's a liar, right? What does Kierkegaard say that what does Kierkegaard say about that attitude? Does anybody know? So answer my question, don't say anything else for now. Anybody can answer my question.
Wait, so maybe it's like, oh, you shouldn't hold anything against them.
But why? What do you remember? Think Kierkegaard. We just studied him, right? We talked about despairing of someone. Oh, they're always going to be like this. And we talked about the opposite. What's the opposite of pinning someone down and saying, you're always going to be like this?
Was it that that you should like kind of turn a blind eye to anything bad that they have and just look at the potential for their good in them? And that's how you allow their food to grow.
What's that called, doing that? What's the word he calls it?
Hope.
Very good, right? So often, right, when we pin someone down, we start to despair of them. We're like, oh, they lied to me, now they're a liar, and they'll always be a liar. And we have put them in this little cage, right? That they're always going to be a liar. And in a way, Kierkegaard, when he says we should look beyond, we should see what else there is, we should look at the potential for the good, he is releasing that person from that tight cage, that border that we put around them, right? So let me say it again so you can write it down, right? The second point is the notion of we put borders when we despair of someone. When we start to say they're never gonna change, that's who they are, they've always been like this, I'm stuck with this crazy person, right? When we do that, we imprison them, we put a border around them and say, this is who you are, right? But to hope is to, right? You release them from that perception, from that judgment, from that despair. Does everybody follow this second point? Put your hand in the screen if you follow. Okay, good. All right, so the third point, who was it? I think there was the hand of Lo.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. So the second point, right? The second point is another way we put a border, right, on someone is when we despair of them. In other words, we tell ourselves, oh, they're never going to change. That's who they are. They're a liar. They're a cheat, and that's who they are. And when we do this, boom, we have put a border. That's who they are. That's it. Nothing else, right? We make them small. But when you hope, you open up, right? You release other possibilities. You release them from this narrow perception of despair that you had. So hope, in a way, is a way to take out the borders. Am I clearer now? Whoever it was who asked me, I forgot who you were.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, Lo, you had something else to add to this border, I think, earlier.
Yeah. I was thinking that maybe like borders in the sense of like when you're in a relationship with someone, like not even just like a loved one, like your friends as well. Like your relationship doesn't end when you're not with them. Like even if you're like away or like far from them, you still have a relationship, and therefore like it doesn't just end when you're not close to them.
Okay, beautiful, right? So in other words, the relationship transcends space, it transcends time. There's a philosopher that even says it transcends death, right? So just like you can be in different spaces and different times, you still have the relationship. The relationship endures, right? Beyond space and time, right? Very good. Nicely put. What else? Anybody else want to add? See if there are any other hands. No. Anything else you want to add to interpret this passage? Actually, I'm surprised you haven't yet talked about this, given the political situation. What are some of the ways that we put borders on each other in our political, in our society, in the political?
Literal borders? Like
What?
literal borders, you mean?
So we have that, that's true. Right? So so maybe we can talk a little bit about that, right? This idea of building walls, right? Around ourselves, between us and people. Right, this is another way to perhaps miss the IU. That's interesting, very nice. I was thinking more, not so literal. Yes, Michelle, very good. And then I'll come to you, Rai. We'll talk about the possession.
Can you hear me, Professor?
Hello, who is this?
This is Jasmine. I had to call in from my phone because the audio on my computer was weird.
We hear you, you're good.
Okay, I was just gonna say like with actual like party affiliations and kind of like, you know, the different names and how they differentiate you from other people and how it differentiates you from like their way of thinking, and also kind of like closes you off to being, you know, like open to what they might be bringing to the table.
Okay, very good. Excellent. I'm going to elaborate on that. Let me just finish with Reich. Reich, I'm going to talk about that in a second, the possession. Michelle, that's exactly where I'm going with the labeling, and that's what the person who just talked, whoever you were, that's what she was.
That's Jasmine.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I mean Dali, sorry, last name.
Oh, Dali. Hello, Dali. Hello again. Okay, let me talk about this a little bit, because this is something that is happening more and more right now in our current political climate. We have begun to label each other, right? So you have Latinos, Blacks, white people, you have, right? So we Asians, right? So we've been used to kind of doing these categories for a long time now, and it's been pretty benign up to now. But now what we're starting to add to the categories are definitions. Oh, Black people are, Latinos are, white people are, right? And the problem is that, what is the problem with that? What begins to be the problem when we start to define people in terms of their color? What are we doing that's problematic? When we start to say all Black people are this, or all Latinos are this, or all white people think like this. What are we doing? What are we missing? Okay, so first of all, right, Bella says, we're separating. We're like, oh, they're this and I'm this, and we have nothing in common. So first of all, you create a division. But what else are we doing when we start to do that? We do it very naturally in our conversations. I do it too. Oh yeah, this white guy said this and this Latino said that, and you know, white people, you know, this, and Blacks and this, right? So very good, right, Musha? We're limiting, right? We're in a way saying you're Latino, therefore you're only this. You're nothing else, right? If you belong to that group, that's who you are, nothing else. So we're putting a border. We are limiting them to this stereotype, right? So Paul says we're being narrow-minded. Very good. Why is this dangerous? I want to go deeper now. Why is it dangerous when we start to say these people are that and these people are that? How does it become actually life-threatening? Because we don't often think about that. We tend to think it's, you know, innocent. Oh, you know, making fun of this group, that group. What is the dangerous potential there? Can anyone see it?
Maybe it's that we start treating them as objects and like stop seeing them as like actual people, and therefore mistreat them.
Very good, right? As soon as you start to talk about a group of people, right, as inferior, as soon as you start to dehumanize a group of people with your words, you're not doing anything, you don't have a gun, but you're doing it with your words, you are taking away whatever will protect them from any potential violence. Let me give you an example, right? We don't understand how powerful our words are, right? We say things like, oh, you know, they're like this, they're like this. But when you start to use your words to slowly, gradually dehumanize a population, you are one step away from bloodshed. I will give you some historical precedents, and then I'll come back to how we are in that path right now in our political context. So let me give you two examples in history where people started to divide the country in different groups and to talk negatively about these groups. So you had, if you recall, Rwanda, the example of Rwanda in the 90s. How many of you are familiar with what happened there? Let's see. Put your hand in the screen. How many of you are familiar with the war 93, 94 in Rwanda? Okay, so you had this country inhabited by two ethnic groups, the Tutsis and the Hutus, right? Let me write it down. It's doing the stupid spell check and I can't bring you, okay, Tutsis and Hutus, right? The two ethnic groups in Rwanda. And they had been coexisting very nicely until the colonial power came, and the colonial had always a strategy to divide, right? So most colonial powers would pick one group they liked, put them in power, and the other group was, you know, trash. So they did this. When the colonial power came, they liked the Tutsis because the Tutsis looked a little more European in their features. So they put them in positions of power, and the Hutus were kind of the peasants, right? When they left, right, the resentment had been growing in the Hutu population, and things started to get stirred up. They started to get stirred up by, you know, some voices of animosity. But you can't right away, right? And they wanted to, you know, kind of take power back, and they could have done this, of course, politically, but the voices were saying, right, the intention was to really get rid of the Tutsis altogether and rule the country. Now, you can't begin to kill someone as long as they're a human being. What's the first step you got to do before you can feel comfortable? I'm giving you good tips here, how to feel comfortable killing someone. What is the first thing you have to do before you feel comfortable killing someone? Does anybody know?
Don't you have to like implement, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Don't you have to like implement legislation and laws that make it okay to like, you know, enact violence against groups, and then people just kind of start to get into it together?
Yes, but before that, even Nazi Germany needed to do that. They had laws, but before that, what did they have to do? So people do it, you know, spontaneously, happily. Yeah, very good, right? Tamam also.
Dehumanize them.
Exactly. Right? So even before people will follow that law, even Hitler knew this, right? You first have to do a strategy of dehumanizing with words. Oh, that group, they're this, they're this. And so they began to call the Tutsis cockroaches and to compare them over and over again to cockroaches, so that when the time came to kill them, well, it's easy. When I see a cockroach, you know, it's disgusting. I want to kill it. So when they create the mindset in the people that these Tutsis, they're less than human, they're like insects, then when the time comes to kill them, it's easier, right? Same strategy in Nazi Germany. Hitler came to power. He had the power to create laws, but he couldn't do it. He first had to have a whole propaganda where the Jew is compared to vermin, to the plague, to, you know, bacteria. That's what vermin is, right? And so then as people get used, and they had caricatures, they would depict them, you know, with, you know, ghastly faces, you know, looking very, you know, greedy, you know. And so people get used to seeing the Jewish person like, ew, right? It's disgusting. So when it's time to kill them, it's easy. It's like, oh yeah, good riddance, right? So in history, we have seen that when you start to separate, the Jews were perfectly integrated, and so were the Hutus and the Tutsis. They were intermarrying. There was no separation. When you start to separate, number one, this group that, this group this group that, and when you start to demean that group, yes, it's only words. Yes, maybe you're kidding. Yes, maybe it's for political strategy that you talk like that, right? Yes, maybe you don't mean it, right? But you are you're setting the stage for violence, right? Now in this country, we're getting there. right? When you have expressions like all Mexicans are rapists and, you know, and drug addicts, and some of them are good people, but in general, this is what they are, right? When you have the demonization of a whole group of people, right? Associating them with criminality, with, you know, with violence, then it becomes easy, right? When some of them are put in prison to be like, yeah, of course, they should be there, right? Or when some of them are, you know, caged in at the border, right? It's like, we feel okay with that because it's not, they're not real people, right? So this is what Buber, so there's something fundamental what Buber is saying is that we need to be very careful with our words, not just with our actions, because our words set the stage. As soon as you have a group that is constantly demonized, you have the potential for violence. You're paving the way, right, to violence. And we are doing this today, right? White people are this, and blacks are this, and Latinos are this, and Asians are that. And we demean these groups, right, over and over again. And we think it's just words, but it's not, right? We are setting the stage in this country, I believe right now, for bloodshed, right? And we need to be very careful. Now, the thing is, I'll get with you in a second, Morissette, right? The thing is that we often do this without even thinking, right? We talk about, there was an African-American philosopher who talked about racism. And he talks about how the lady's on the street with her little purse, right? And then she sees a black guy coming the other direction and instinctively holds the purse closer to her body, right? Or switches the sidewalk, or goes somewhere else, right? We are constantly, and the same philosopher, by the way, if you want to look into him, he's interesting, George Yancey, right? So he's very interesting. He says, actually, we are all in a way raised racist. We are so surrounded by it that all of us to a certain degree is already racist, and we are putting borders on each other. And what Buber is saying, we have to constantly, vigilantly undo these stereotypes if we're going to maintain peace, right, in this country. Okay, Morissette, go ahead. Morissette?
Yes, it actually closes us to having sympathy. Like, for when I mean sympathy in every kind of way. Like, when we start labeling or saying that this is this is that, I feel like that's how we are. Like, for example, nowadays, like, if you are a white person, if you are a white person who doesn't sympathize with the Black Lives Matters movement and you're seeing it on TV, some people will be like, they will go on Twitter and be like, oh, whatever happened to them happened to them. I don't care. Oh, they shouldn't be in the street anyway. Exactly. You will see a Black person saying the exact same thing. Something happened to a child, an infant, something that you would never think would be politicized. And a Black person will be like, oh, I don't care. It's a white infant. It's a white toddler. Or they will grow up to become exactly like them. So technically, it just closes up our heart to everyone, to be seen as human. You don't see the person as a human, and I feel that's how I connected to that text. We start seeing colors, we start seeing species, we start seeing mindset instead of person, instead of a human. We don't see the person, we just dissect the person. We say, okay, this is a white person with a white color skin with that type of speech, so that person should be labeled as this, while we don't see the human as, if that person is gonna be hit by a bus and I'm here, I should not be yell at them and be like, you get out of the street, you know. It's just, I feel like that's how we're becoming nowadays.
Yes, we're increasingly, it's very worrying, right? For me at least, just the lack of civility among people, right? We just say, I mean, there's these funny videos going around about this Karen you guys told me about. So I spent a really toxic evening watching those videos. I regret it now. But so this is the same thing, right? There is a kind of, you know, aggressivity and lack of civility. And perhaps on both levels, right? Sometimes these Karens are complaining legitimately, sometimes they're not, right? But in general, there is no respect, right, for the different spaces, right, that we are sharing. This is often an issue. So I really think that in our country right now, we are losing something. We are losing the you, right? We are losing the IU. We're seeing everybody like another thing that needs to be pushed out of our way so we can have some peace and quiet around here, right? And this is the problem. We're missing on the human beings that surround, we're missing out on the human beings that surround us, right? Any other comments on this issue of borders? So before you add, right? So putting borders is also racism, right? It's also sexism. Any moment you stereotype someone, you are putting a border and you're missing the dimension of the you. You're now back on the surface, right? You're missing this deeper relationship you could be having. Any other comments on the you?
I don't know if anybody saw that thing over the weekend when they published that doctors in bikinis things that they say if you're a doctor, you shouldn't be putting yourself like that online in the bikinis. Like if you're going to the beach, you're a doctor, you should be wearing your white coat. And so technically this is one of the things that it's labeling as well, because a male doctor will go to a party and get drunk and be seeing the Oompa Loompa. Nobody would look at him in any type of way, but a female doctor go on the beach and wear a bikini and post a picture like that. But oh my God, I mean, woo, you're not professional. I wrote a whole essay and sent it to the news because my heart just sank when that happened, because I felt like this is ridiculous.
Exactly, right? Since you're a doctor, you're this, you can't be that, right? Or if you're a woman, you're this, you can't be that. Or if you're a white guy, you're this, you can't be that, right? Why? Why do we limit each other like that, right? Kumar, why don't you tell us live what you think about the media. Kumar?
Sorry, I was unmuted. Yeah, it's just I feel like the media always goes on the most negative way, in the most like negative point of view possible.
Very good, very good.
So yeah, I didn't hear about the bikini thing, but I'm not even surprised. I could definitely see that happen.
Right, we are now, when I've stopped watching American news because it's become just gossip, right? Oh, he did this, he did that, he did this, he did that. And it's constantly, right, the meaning of, and I mean on both sides, right, of the aisle, of the political aisle, you have now this kind of, constant demeaning of people rather than discussion of issues, right? And this is where we are now. We're in high school. We're back in high school, mean girls, right? And it's so I'm not against, I do think we have to be critical of the way people think, but instead of criticizing people, let's criticize mindsets, right? If we can switch from criticizing groups of people to criticizing a given mindset, which by the way, crosses into all groups, right? Criticizing mindsets, worldviews, attitudes might be more productive than constantly demeaning this person or that person. They did this, or here's the scoop on what they did now, and so forth. And we are again, right, when we are constantly demonizing certain people, whether it's certain Republicans or certain Democrats, we are putting borders. We're missing their humanity, right? If you're a Democrat, you just have to tell yourself, yes, Trump supporters are human too. And if you're a Trump supporter, you have to tell yourself, yes, these, urban liberals, they're people too, right? We forgetting our shared humanity. We are fighting each other like, when you got like Lysol in the bathroom fighting against mold. So this is what we were saying. We're missing the deeper level here, right? Very good. Okay, so let's go to the last one, and then we can take actually, I have two more. But this is the one that goes with what Reich was saying, that whoever says you does not have something, he has nothing. What does that mean? Does Reich want to interpret this by any chance? Since you were on the right track.
Is it saying like you don't have the person, like they're not yours, or your
Possession.
Exactly, that's what you were saying, right? So again, another way to treat someone like an it is to want to control them, to possess them, right? You can't do this. You shouldn't think like that, and don't do it like that. Let me help you. Here, let me give you advice. You don't understand anything, right? This way of wanting, and by the way, you in dating it's okay, but once you marry someone, this will, some of us actually, it find it unbearable to live with someone unless we can control them. So we want to control how they do this, how they do that, how they dress, what time they go out, what time they come back. And this is a very big problem. When we're on that level, controlling, we're back on the it, right? We have to be vigilant. This whole paragraph is an invitation to be vigilant. Buber is saying we all do this. We are all doing this. We all have the urge to use and discard. We all have the urge to stereotype. We all have the urge to possess and control. We have to be vigilant and constantly be conscious of that and take a step back, right? So he's not saying we should, right? He's acknowledging that we are sexist, racist, possessive. What's the other one? Manipulative, right? We all have it, right? But he's saying we have to constantly discipline ourselves to not do that, to hold back, to take a step back and resist the urge, right? Okay, now a couple more quotes. There's page 62, which is the one that Hakimian mentioned, which I thought was really good, which goes back to Rumi. How many of you are on page 62? The you encounters me by grace, put your hand. Okay, right. So the you encounters me by grace, it cannot be found by seeking. We are back with Rumi. Remember what we talked about, exactly what Hakimian was saying, right? This is the beloved, you cannot make them happen. You cannot make the love in your life happen. You can only be ready, open, receptive, attentive. You can't make it happen. It comes to you by grace, right? This is beautiful reformulation of what Rumi was saying, right? If you're single right now, what Buber is saying is relax. Be receptive, be open, because the you will come by grace. It's a gift. It's not something you should be trying to make happen, right? Okay, very good. Now, here's the last line that I want to go over a little bit. It's a very important line. Do you see the next to last line on page 62, which is, I require a you to become, becoming I say you. Put your hand if you see where I am. Okay. All right, let's stop on that a little bit. I require a you to become, becoming I say you. What is he saying? Does anybody know? Nobody knows? Let me break it down. In order to become I require you. What does that mean? Okay, let's see what Hakimian says. Chicken versus which one comes first? So he's saying that I need you first before I become I. There's no chicken and egg thing here. He's very clear, right? Although actually you're right. Becoming I, you're right. Never mind, Hakimian, unfair. Yes, becoming I say you. So Bella, I'm going to keep that debate on Ubuntu for another time since it will take me too long. But yes, you're right. Okay, what does it mean that I require you to be me? What does this mean?
Is it that once you respect others, then you'll be respected back?
Almost.
We have to also be in the other person's shoes and understand the other person and know what they think.
Wait, say that again, Agira?
Maybe know the expectations of the other person and be in the other person's shoes.
Close. Close.
I think he says to the other that he needs to be their you and that they can be his you. You know, it's like a two-way road. It's not just like you're going to be my person and I'm going to be your object.
Yes, you're almost there. Tamam is the closest. What do you mean when you say you make me better? This is interesting. Tamam, speak to us. Where is Tamam?
I think sometimes other people bring out certain qualities in ourselves that make us better, that we wouldn't necessarily otherwise know.
Excellent.
Like, you know, like people who are like engaged and get married, they're like, I'm my best self when I'm with them. I think like that's what it comes from. Is like, I like who I am when I'm with you, kind of thing.
You're almost there. You're burning. Morissette. What do you think?
Isn't it like the whole point of codependency? Like, because that's how I saw it. Exactly how she just said. It's like how we relate or how we need someone else in order to become a whole.
Yes, very good, right? Now, he goes even, so let me translate, put together what you guys all said, right? In order to be truly me, I have to be treating you like a you. In other words, I will always remain a stunted version of myself as long as I treat everyone like an it. This is so profound because it gives us an incentive to go deeper, right? If we think that, oh, I can be an amazing person and treat everyone like an it, then you're deluding yourself, right? Because you cannot get to the level of your own humanity unless you treat people to the level of their own humanity. In other words, you remain small, narrow, stunted as a human being as long as you have not left behind the habit of treating people like an it, right? And so the only way to really become fully yourself is to allow the other person to be fully themselves. Morissette, do you want to add? Morissette, did you have a hand?
Oh, sorry. It's almost like the same thing that we got from the last reading, I think from Kierkegaard or something, when he said, the like recognize the like only love you, if you have love, you can recognize love. So technically only when you treat someone the way you want to be treated, that you can actually see yourself inside them. So I need you in order to become a you. So as soon as I see you as myself, I will be able to see myself as well, or to be myself.
Exactly. So this brings us back to where we are, right, in our country, right? We see whole groups of people like, I wish they weren't here, right? They're, and both sides, by the way. I know so many Republicans wish Democrats would vanish, right? And so many Democrats wish Republicans would vanish, right? And what we're missing is that as long as I'm not able to connect with this Republican on an IU level as a Democrat and vice versa, I am not a full human being myself, right? We tend to think, oh, when they go away, finally I can be myself. No, it's as long as you cannot relate to that person as a you, you're still small, you're still stunted. So this is really an invitation. What Buber is saying is we need to have the courage to bridge, to transcend ourselves and to connect with difficult people, difficult personalities, because as long as we see a whole group of people like an it, we're not becoming an I, right? Especially the people we despise, right? Because when we despise, why do we despise? Because we've stereotyped them and we've made them into its. We've created a border, right? So as long as you put borders around people and be like, oh, I'm not going to talk to these people because X, Y, Z, you're missing the you and you're missing your I, right? And so this is why to be racist or to be sexist or to be constantly stereotyping, you're not only hurting the other people, you're hurting yourself, right? Let me say that again because this is so important. Let me say that again. Anytime you exhibit racist or sexist or stereotyping behavior, you're not just hurting them, you're hurting yourself, right? Because as you dehumanize somebody else, you are dehumanizing yourself because connected here, right? I require a you to become. If I change you into an it, boom, I also reduce myself. Am I making sense? How important it is not just for the other to abstain from this behavior, but for ourselves, for our own growth. Does everybody see what I'm saying? Put your hand. Hand. I don't see any hands. Nobody understood? Okay, good. All right. So, okay. And then, of course, becoming I say you, this is the reverse, right? This is what we saw with Aristophanes, with Kant. As long as I don't respect myself, I can't truly respect you, right? And many times people, you can see this in psychology, people who are constantly demeaning others how are they feeling inside, right? What is going on with them? How are they feeling about themselves? It does start with self-love and self-respect, right? Until you have found a way to love yourself and respect yourself, you cannot truly also treat someone like a you. So both, right? It works both ways. Very good. Okay, any questions before we take a break? No, good. All right, so we'll meet in exactly, what time is it? Can we meet in just 3 minutes, like at 5:30? Is that okay? Put your hand if that's okay. Just 3 minutes. Okay, very good. So 3 minutes of break. All right, so we're going to now go into the second section. So second section of the text, where we will now apply everything that we learned in the first section to marriage or to any type of relationship you're in, right? He talks about marriage, but you can apply this to any type of long-term relationship which has hit a crisis point, right? This is the advice he's going to give us. So before we get into that text on page 95, which we'll comment on together, I just want to summarize a little bit the pages before briefly, so you have an idea what he's talking about. I'll just summarize and maybe give you a couple quotes. In essence, when Buber starts to talk about marriage, he's first talking about two trends in his context, social context, right? So, and we're still we have now 3 trends, I'll explain. But at the time of Buber, they had kind of a backlash against marriage, right? So there was what was called the free love movement. I think this is how he talks about it. Yeah, free love of movement. So you had kind of a backlash against the kind of, the marriage with the nice wife and husband, and they're like bound together by this oath, and even if they don't feel anything for each other, they still stay because the kids and the car and the house, the mortgage, right? So people were kind of becoming very disillusioned with marriage as something which doesn't work, which is just, there were 2 problems with marriage actually. First problem is that there's no feelings left. People are just staying together because they're sharing a mortgage, right? Or kids. And the second thing is the roles, the gender roles, right? These are 2 things that Buber is observing is problematic. Even today in marriage, right? You still have these gender roles. As soon as you get married, is like, wait a second, you're the wife, you're supposed to be here. And you're the husband, you're supposed to be there, right? And when we don't fit, when our partners don't fit into these gender roles, we get nervous, right? So there's these 2 problems, gender roles and the fact that we're together, not really because we love each other so much, but because, the kids, the mortgage, the SUV, and so forth. Now, how would you describe that kind of relationship that I just described about marriage in Buberian terminology? Is it an I-it, an I-you, an I-I?
I-it.
Okay, very good, right? And that's the problem, right? Buber is observing that marriage has degenerated into an I-it relationship, right? Many marriages. This is in fact the pitfall of marriage. The temptation of marriage is for slowly the 2 spouses to become its for each other, right? Well, you're just here to pay the bills, or I'm sticking around because you're the father of my children, right? Function, or, you're the wife, you should do this, right? So if it's going badly, you stay because they're still kind of useful to you or to your kids. And if it's going good, you stay, but you're stuck in the gender role, right? So Buber is observing that marriage in many ways degenerates. It can degenerate into an I-it relationship. So that's the problem, right? So the backlash against that is what Buber calls free love, right? And in this context, so I'll describe it again, right? In this context, you really want to not do something out of a commitment because that's kind of artificial. You do it because you feel it. I'm with you because I love you. And now I don't love you anymore, so we're done, right? So this backlash was saying we need to recover the feelings. We need to follow our hearts more. We need to be in a relationship, not because of the kids or because of the mortgage, but because we love each other, right? So this free love movement was saying, let's get rid of marriage because it's kind of like a straitjacket, and let's just follow the movements of the heart, right? Now, what is the problem with that approach, and what Does it resemble? I, it, I, you. It's actually a third one. Yes, Morissette. Morissette?
This is the part that I felt that he was a little bit contradicting himself. Like at first he just told you not to discard people when they're not useful to you anymore. But now it's technically telling me to discard anybody who's not making me happy anymore, because I shouldn't stay in a relationship just because that person is being useful to me.
Okay, but be careful. He's not saying that's his point of view, right? He's talking about, he's saying this is what's going on. And of course, he's actually going to criticize that, right? So that's not his point of view, right? He's looking at the renewal of marriage, right? So the freedom.
Yes, but on a point, isn't it, what is it about? Like, because most relationship, and we're talking about a book that was written in 1920s. Now we're in 2020, we're still going through the same thing, if not more.
So you'll be surprised that the renewal of marriage doesn't take place through the renewal of feelings.
Yes.
You're going to see. It's not what we think. It's not about rekindling the spark. It is very different, right? So what Buber.
Yes, I know. It's because I read the book, and that's why it bothers me. It's because I feel like rekindling the marriage doesn't really comes with the feeling at this point.
Oh, I see. Okay, yes, that's a good criticism that you can make to Buber. Yes, he does dismiss feelings, and you're right.
Yes, it dismissed the whole feeling parts. Like it really doesn't matter, and that's why I read the whole book, is because I'm like, okay, I gotta see where he's going with that. Like, is it gonna acknowledge that I'm not happy? Like,
yeah, that's where Buber fails us. You're right. That's where Kierkegaard maybe is closer to us.
Yeah.
Because Kierkegaard does acknowledge the importance of feelings. Yeah, Buber does say, although I don't think he's against feelings, but he's saying it's not what's going to save the marriage. It will come as a result. That's how I would argue it, right? The feelings will kick in if you can master this technique that he's going to talk about in a second, right? So
yeah, and that's how he says you dwell with the relationship. You are the relationship. So technically, it's not your feeling inside of you that you deal with the relationship, you're feeling that person. So technically you have to dismiss your feeling and put this, and it's just,
yes, but
me, I don't know.
Yes, once you do this, once you are able to restore the relationship in the way that he'll describe, the feelings will flow again. That's what I would add, right? Buber doesn't say that, but I think you can legitimately say that. So wait, we're getting ahead. Okay, so we'll get there. And I will introduce the feelings. We'll see how it connects. That's my addition, right? Okay, so the second, right, the path of free love actually is the path of what Buber calls the I, right? In other words, when you're only following your heart and following your feelings, who are you in relationship with? Are you in relationship with another person when it's all about your feelings and, oh, I'm not feeling this, and I feel like the love is over?
Yourself only.
Exactly, right? So there he's introducing the temptation, right, of the free love movement. He's saying this is the pitfall, right? If you only follow your feelings. So he's not saying feelings are bad. He's saying if feelings are the criteria for whether you stay or not, we have a problem. Right? Because if you're only following your feelings and obeying your feelings, there's only you and your feelings, right? There is no other for whom you might be responsible. Buber talks about responsibility beyond the feelings, close to Kant, right? So make sure you jot this down, right? These are the two paths. The path of marriage, which can degenerate into I, it, then the path of free love, which can degenerate into I. And so Buber is like, well, what do we do? So he proposes a way out, which is what he calls the renewal of marriage, right? So we're going to see how that works. And then we're going to also talk about whether feelings are in the picture or not, right? To respond to Morissette. So let's go to the quotes here on marriage. Go to page 95, the third line, sorry. Everybody there, marriage can never be renewed. Put your hand in the screen if you're there. Screen, hand. Marriage can only be renewed, page 95, third line. Okay, very good. Okay, now this quote, I tell you, I want you to make a magnet with it, put it on your fridge. This is such a good quote, and it can really pull you out of the crisis that you will eventually face. Okay, marriage, he says, can never be renewed except by that which is always the source of all true marriage. So he's not even saying the source of true marriage is God or nothing like that. He's saying the source of all true marriage is that two human beings reveal the you to one another. Okay, let me. Is someone trying to talk, or is this background noise? Okay. All right, so let's go over that line. What does it mean, right? What does it mean that the source of all true marriage is two human beings reveal the you to one another? So we already know what the IU looks like in general. Let's look at what it looks like in marriage. Now, here's what I suggest, where I suggest Buber is going with that. Buber is saying, if we can renew marriage on the level of the IU, everything else kicks in. The feelings that were gone, the sex that was bland, all of this will revive if we can recover the IU that we have lost, right? So make sure you write this down, right? If we can recover the IU that we have lost, and we'll talk about how in a second, everything else, so this is my response to Morissette, right? Everything else that had died, the feelings, the sex, right? Everything else will begin to come alive again, right? And so too often we try to revive the feelings, but Buber is saying, no, that's the wrong place to start. You can't revive feelings. Feelings, they come or they don't come. It's a grace, right? What you can revive, however, is the IU relationship. This you can do. And as you work on reviving the IU relationship, the feeling will be granted again. Does that make sense, Morissette? Morissette, are you there?
Yes. I forgot you can't see me. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the idea. So make sure you write this down, right? That what Buber is saying is, he's not saying feelings, well, I don't think he's saying feelings are to be neglected. He's saying you can't fix a marriage based on the feelings, because the feelings is not in our control. We know that. I don't love you anymore. I want to love you, but I don't. Right? We force, we try to, it doesn't work. You cannot try to fix or arrange or renew a marriage by manipulating your feelings, because you don't have control over the feelings. The feelings died, right? But you do have control over how you treat the other person, the degree of respect you show them, and how much of a you they still are for you. And as you begin to work again, the IU relationship, the rest begins to come alive again, right? So it's never a good thing to go and start with fixing the feelings or fixing the sex. You don't, this is just natural gonna come out of the IU. It will naturally blossom again once you have created the foundation again, which is this IU. So going back to what we did in the first hour, right? With the IU relationship, what would it mean to reveal the you, first of all, of your partner? Let's start with that. So let's imagine you're in a crisis and you tell yourself, I'm gonna follow Buber's advice. I'm gonna start treating my partner as a you. What are some of the things you have to start doing? Make a list based on what we learned in the first hour.
Stop labeling and dehumanizing someone.
Give me an example how we label our spouses. I mean, I don't go around saying, you know, you're white or you're Asian, that's why. I mean, maybe some of us do that. Stop being so Asian, stop being so, you know, Spanish. But tell me, what kind of labels do we give our partners in general?
So I don't know if it's my connection, but Professor, I'm out, and I don't know if it's yeah.
It's not you. I'm also having trouble with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, same here.
Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes. But your connection is really
very bad.
I don't know.
I know, it's terrible. All right, I repeat the question. All right, I'll put it in the chat. How would you reveal the you of your partner? How would you begin to treat your partner like a you? What are some of the ways you can do that?
I'll tell him to stop being a baby.
What do you mean? No, no.
I will stop telling him to stop being a
Oh,
baby
that's
because
good.
that's something
Yes,
I say very often.
yes. We should
I
stop.
guess to mature.
What? Like
I mean, they have to mature.
so when you say that, though, what are you doing when you say you have to mature? What have you done? Are you seeing them as a you when you say you have to mature?
A little bit.
Really? When you say to them, "You're a baby," you
Possess them and try to make them change.
what? Can
I
you?
think she meant she will have to stop telling them to
Oh,
mature.
then we're good. Then we're good. God, the internet is very bad. Yes, excellent. Right, the way we have categorized our partners. Oh, they're such a baby. They're so immature. They're this. They're that. All those negative voices that sprout, in our fertile minds. Right. They're this. They're incompetent and they're immature and they need to change. Stop that. You have right. Once you begin again to respect your partner in who they are becoming, right? You're back on the IU level, right? As long as you disrespect them and say you're this, you're that, stop being this, stop being that, you're losing the you and you're losing the feelings and you're losing the sex at the same time. Everything is going down the drain, right? The moment you begin to discipline yourself and say, okay, I'm going to respect you in your becoming. I'm going to respect you in the way you are growing. I'm going to just say nothing and respect where you are. You recover the you. Morissette.
But because you just compare it to a relationship, is there a way really to just stop, as a woman, to stop telling a man to stop? We're gonna stop telling them to stop being a baby? Because my mother is still telling my father to stop being a baby. I don't know if there's hope for that. So I don't really see it. If I stop saying it, will that actually make him stop being a baby?
Remember what Kierkegaard said, right? This is where Kierkegaard is very useful. What Kierkegaard said is the best way to help someone grow into who they're supposed to be is not to tell them be that, is to see them already there, right? So instead of seeing them as a baby, which is to despair of them, he would say, see them as a man. See the man that they're becoming and water that, right? Praise, compliment. Yes, I love what you did there, and this is amazing. And I think I feel like I can trust you. Fake it till you make it, right? And as you're doing that, the person will grow into a man. By the way, the same goes for guys with women, right? If your wife or girlfriend is immature and capricious and always wants her own way, again, water the good seeds. Right? This is the way you can transform. But by saying you're this, you're keeping them there. Right? And you're destroying who they could become. Does that make sense, Morissette?
Yes, it does.
It's hard. I tell you, this part is especially hard for women because we are very lucid. We see all the flaws. Much more perhaps that a man sees the flaws in us, we see the flaws in them, and it's very hard for us to see the potential at the same time. And to stop seeing the flaws. It's a decision. It's not you don't see them and you're blind. You choose to see something else because that is more productive. And likewise for the man with the woman, you choose to see something else. And that is the way that you can give the space for the person to grow, nurture their growth rather than constantly say, you're this, stop being this. As long as you say, stop being this, they're going to stay this. This is, if you want them to stay a baby, continue to say, stop being a baby. Because that will keep them there because you are nourishing the conception that they're a baby. Does that make sense? So very good. You guys are already starting to get it. How else can we redeem the you of the other person in the relationship? What are some other ways you could do that?
I have a question about what you said about Kierkegaard's hope and like how you should like water or nourish the good that they do. So like, can't that be considered a type of like psychological manipulation? Because like, I don't know, you're just kind of like rewarding them when they like do something that you like to try to get them to continue to do what you like. And I feel like that, I don't know, that's kind of manipulative and treating them as an object also a little bit.
It depends, right? If you're trying to manipulate them to be something you want them to be, then yes. But if you're trying to help them be who they are, remember, you hope for the person. You're not hoping for you. So your intention is going to make the difference. Is your intention to manipulate them to take you out to this party? So you're going to say, oh, you're such a good dancer and blah, 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 right? Now you're manipulating them for you. Or are you simply seeing the potential for them and watering their growth? So it depends. The difference is the same action, you're right. It looks the same. But what is your intention? Is it to get them to do something for you? Or is it to get them to journey more deeply in their own self? Does that make sense? Hakimian, I think it was you.
Yeah, thanks.
The purity of your intention. Why are you doing it, right? Very good, but good question. Very good. Okay, go back to the first class. What else did we learn about the IU? What else can we do to renew the you in the other person? So we stop, having negative thoughts about them. That's one very important way. How else?
I think we see this in almost every philosopher that we've read so far, but to stop controlling them and stop trying to take over and just let the relationship go in the way that it goes.
Yes, very good. Stop trying to control them and to control the relationship. Stop giving them advice. Stop trying to help them. Stop trying to do it for them, right? Allow them, just create. I'm learning this more and more myself. Our task is not to make them into something, it's to create the environment where they can become who they were meant to be. So controlling, right? Like, oh, I think we should do this and you should dress like this and you can't think that. And this is, again, you're losing the you. And you will see, by the way, anytime you have a crisis in a relationship, you can trace it back to the loss of the you. And if you start to work on that again, everything else can come back, right? So very good. Number 2 is controlling. What else? Ziget.
Sorry, you said like to stop trying to help them also. Does that mean to let them make mistakes along the way, but that they'll get it by themselves? Exactly. Like you don't do anything to help lead them there? Okay.
Yes, I think as women, we tend to have a big problem. We see everyone as a potential child. We saw this already, right? In the first discussion we had. And so we see the man as someone needs our help. The man is a grown adult, right? Unless they ask for our help, obviously, right? But often they don't. They got this. And here we are, like driving. You know how those people, when you're driving and there's someone in the seat driving next to you? This is what we do in a marriage. We're driving in the other seat. Whereas the person has got this, but we think, no, you need my help. Yes, we have to also, unless the person asking for our help, we have to step back. Unless you want to be their mother, then you can be my guest. If you want to be their mother, go ahead, help. But when they don't ask, right? But if you want to be a spouse or a girlfriend, you have to create that space for them to live, breathe, make mistakes. Does that make sense, Ziget?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, good. So very good. How else? I'm looking. Let's go back to 55. What else is the issue? We saw the stereotyping, negative thoughts. We saw the controlling. Is there one more thing we can say about the way that we act in a marriage that needs to change? The way that we lose the you.
I think stop looking for your own happiness, and we wrote something. Like we seek things that are useful to us, but also to like seek happiness for both of you and not just make it one-sided.
Very good, right? This notion of whoever says you does not have something, he has nothing. The you is not right. The person, to recognize that the person is not just there for you. Person has their own life and their own interests, and you can also be there for them, right? This is another way to release them. right? So this is first thing, fundamental. And as you begin to shift, the rest can begin to blossom again, the emotional part, the sexual part. Now, there's another component. What about me? What does it mean to start to see myself as a you? What do you think? Right? They reveal the you to each other. So I have to also recover my you. I have lost my you. How do we sometimes lose our own you in a relationship?
If you stop respecting yourself.
Exactly.
Like you need to know yourself and love yourself before you love somebody else.
We allow ourselves to be controlled. We allow ourselves to be fixed in a gender role. We allow ourselves to be disrespected. And this too is something we need to fight, right? Stand up for ourselves. Doesn't mean you leave, doesn't mean you become aggressive, but like Kant was saying, respect is for me too, right? I need to learn to respect the other, but I also need to respect myself. This is also key. How much have you lost yourself in the relationship? That's what you need to ask yourself. Have I lost myself in this relationship? Have I abandoned parts of myself? Have I given up on my dreams? Have I given up on my values? Have I given up on my voice? Right? Have I given up on my pleasure in this relationship? Right? How much have I given up? How much do I need to ask for? Right? That I have forfeited. This is also recovering the you. Right? Morissette.
Don't we have to forgive ourselves as well? Like, for example, I can't remember which one of the reading, but it was about forgiving, like forgiveness. Don't we have to learn to forgive the other person the same way that we would have forgiven ourselves? Like, for example, when we make some mistake, we are very quick to forgive ourselves for it. It's like, oh, I forgot this. It's okay. I'll make it up for it. But then if the other person does the same thing, you are very quick to judge them, to put them like in the spotlight and be like, you'll be responsible. Why would you do this? But if you did it, you'll be like, oh my God, let me just correct that. And you're okay with it.
Very good. Forgiveness is one of the fundamental ways to give the other back their you. Because before you forgive, they're stuck in what they have done. That's who they are. When you forgive, you release them and you say, let's start again. Let's do this again. You release all of the possibilities that they could still be when you forgive. Do you follow? This is so important because as long as we don't forgive, that person is, for example, suppose your beloved cheats on you, right? Now they're a cheater, they've done this, that's who they are, they're a jerk, complete, And now, until you forgive them, that's who they are, that's what they did. When you forgive them and you choose, let me just carry this and not push it back in your face, let's give us a second chance, you are opening up for that person the possibility of being somebody else. You have released them from the borders of their own mistake, from the limitation and the prison that they have put themselves in. You are releasing them and saying, let's try again. You can be more. We can do better, right? And this is another way to give them back their you. Anytime you forgive, you are releasing them into their you. Very good, Morissette. Very good. Okay. So this is the key. Like I said, you can do this easily. Trace any relationship you're in. Go to the crisis. Start digging. You will see that at one point, the you has degenerated into an it or into an I, right? And that what Buber is saying, yeah, the feelings are gone. Yeah, the sex is boring. But don't start there. Go back to the foundational structure of the relationship. Is the IU healthy? If it's not, begin to make it healthy. Try to reshape the way you relate, and all the rest will come back naturally, right? As you begin to have respect for each other, as you begin to release each other from your negative stereotypes, negative thinking, you're creating the what do you call it? The space for the feelings to be able to grow again, right? We should never, I believe, become discouraged when in a relationship we don't feel anything for that person anymore. Too often our heart dies and we think it's over. There's nothing we can do. And it does feel like that there's nothing we can do. There is, right? What Buber is saying is go back and begin to rebuild the foundation. Where have you lost your self-respect? Where have they lost their respect? Where have you lost a part of yourself? Where have you taken a part of themselves, right? Rebuild the foundation, create the environment for feelings to be able to blossom again, and for passion to be able to resurrect, right? So that's the idea. So very good news, right? That when the feeling dies, it's not the end of the world. You can still, you have to go to the foundation, the IU, and as you begin to fix that, you're creating again the space, or the ground, or I can't find the word I'm looking for, the environment, right? You're creating again the right environment for your feelings to grow back, right? Any questions on this? Okay, so you're gonna have, I'm gonna pause the recording or stop it actually.